Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I'm trying to get a really quick video done for you guys tonight. It's Friday night here in Australia. Chris and I are going away for the weekend. It's a big 2-day table tennis tournament over in Albury, which is north, southwest, east of Victoria, and it's my first one for the year. So I haven't been well enough to go to any, and now I am. So I'm going to go and kick some butt. And in the meantime, I thought I'd quickly make up this bag. So this is made from a tea towel. You know those linen tea towels that you see with calendars on them? This is from 2019. Sometimes you get them with nice themed plants, animals, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to use. There's so many vintage tea towels out there. You can make some really great little shopping totes with them. It's just one piece of fabric and the piece of webbing for your handles, and in half an hour or so you've got a nice little bag to take around with you. Bonus on this one is that we're going to be creating flat felled seams. So I believe a flat felled seam is one of the strongest seams that you can have. We've got that on the base of the bag, and that's a technique that you can apply to those supermarket shopping bags that I've been making for years as well. Anyway, I should stop waffling. Let's get straight to it. We only need two things for this project, that being a tea towel. This one is a calendar from 2019 designed for the National Trust. And we also have some webbing that we're going to use for the handles. This is a much lighter weight webbing than what I usually use. I usually use quite a thick polypropylene webbing, but this one's a nice and light one, which I think will go nicely with this cotton. We're only going to be using one layer of fabric. We need to iron our fabric, and I couldn't really get many of the creases out. This is as good as it's going to get. Fold the fabric in half, and we're going to cut straight across here. The reason we're cutting this in half is because we've got a calendar that's facing us with the correct orientation this way, but if you turn it over, everything's upside down. So if you've got a calendar where the print doesn't matter, you don't need to cut this in half, and then you're not going to be creating a flat felled seam. So I folded that in half, and where that fold is across the center, I'll cut straight across. And of course I can't do that because I can't apply any pressure with my wrist. That's the hardest part over with. So now we have the correct orientation for that side and for the other side. And what I'm going to do, just to make this uniform, is cut that hem off at the bottom and at the top. The only reason I'm doing that is because I want my fabric pieces to be the same size. Okie dokie. Now we have this side with the right orientation and this one here. Now when you're creating flat felled seams, you can actually do the sewing from two different sides. What we're going to do is turn the wrong side up here, and we'll have the wrong side facing. Line up that raw edge at the bottom. So we've got the right orientation here and the correct orientation here. That's the most important. And with the right sides facing out, we're going to sew with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch. I tell you, some days it's impossible to find a marker that will show up nicely on fabric. Okay, so this is the bottom of our bag. I've got my 1.5 centimetre line along here, or 5/8 of an inch, and you're going to stitch all the way down that edge. So I've lined up the side edge of my fabric here. I've got the right sides facing out, and I'm going to stitch along that line I've marked. So you can see here we've got our seam hidden away there, but you can see it over on this side. We're going to press our seam open now. And once you've got that nicely pressed open, we need to trim half of one side. So it doesn't matter which side you choose. Bring the back and front of your bag together, and you can lay that fabric down so that it sits nice and flat. And where this seam is right here, you want to measure half of that distance across the centre, and you want to measure or mark that all the way across, and then you want to cut that little bit of excess off. So you can do that with scissors, or you can use your rotary cutter. And if you're using your rotary cutter, just make sure that there's no fabric behind that seam. Place the edge of your ruler down so that it lines up with that line that you've got marked in the middle there. And I'm actually using one of my faded 1/4 inch lines here and lining that up on the seam. So then I can evenly cut 1/4 inch away. Open that fabric out again, and we've got a narrow seam and the wide one. We'll grab the iron again and we'll press that seam over to this side. Then you're going to fold the larger seam or the wider seam over that narrow one. So you're going to cover it, and we can iron this as we go just to set a crease. It'll help us later. Fold that over as you go. And then once you've folded that over, we're going to fold this side all the way over so that we cover that raw edge, and iron that one more time. And if you want to, you can pin that in place. I'm just going to leave it as it is. It's folded nicely. There's a good crease set all the way along the fabric. We're now going to sew right along the edge of this piece of fabric right here. And what you'll have is 2 seams on the outside and 1 seam or stitching line showing on the inside. So I've got the edges folded over. You can see that raw edge neatly tucked away underneath. Just have that folded under and stitch. So that's your flat felled seam with the double row of stitching showing on the outside of the bag. I like the double stitching on the outside. It's just like you see on your jeans, except you have a decorative stitch. So that's what we're having today. Now it's time to put our handles on and fold the top edges over, because remember we cut that off before. From the raw edge at the top, I'm measuring 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimetres. No, I'm not. I'm measuring 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres. And I'm just going to mark a line right across on both sides. So that's 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres. Now we're going to fold this raw edge up to the line. You can press it as you go. Probably shouldn't have got rid of the iron, but I'm just going to finger press this because it's a nice medium cotton, so it'll press really nicely just by hand. Then I'm going to cut this webbing into 2 pieces, about that size. So I've got 2 lengths of webbing for my handles, which are 26 inches or 66 centimetres. Let's find the centre, fold that in half and mark a crease. We might as well do that on the other side as well. And we might as well fold this edge over as well. This is my centre. From the centre, we're going to measure out 4 inches or 10 centimetres. We'll do that on both sides. And with that fabric folded over once, we're going to place the raw edge of our handle just on there. So that raw edge has still only been folded the one time, keeping your handle nice and flat. We'll place the other side down as well. And then we're going to fold this edge over one more time. And you can clip that in place. And where the handles are facing the inside of the bag, we can just hold that in place with your finger, fold the edge of the handle up and over, and clip that back in place. And repeat for this side. So just make sure that the end of your webbing is tucked in to that fold. And we can take this back to the machine and stitch along the bottom edge and then along the top edge. And that will secure that handle in place really well. For the other side, we're going to do the same thing. We've got the centre marked here and 4 inches or 10 centimetres from either side. Your first fold has been folded down. And then we'll fold that one more time. So let's go and sew both of those edges. So we'll sew the bottom edge first. And at the other end we'll do the same. All right, that is our handles in place. Now we can bring the right sides together. We've already got our seams folded over on the edge, so we don't need to do a French seam. All we need to do really is just sew the sides together. Where you've got your flat felled seam along the bottom, just lay that out so that the seam sits nice and flat, and line that up to the top. So we can line up the fabric along the edge there and sew that. And we'll do this side as well. Because there's so much bulk in the fabric at the top where the seams are, I'm actually going to be sewing a little bit further in, say where the fold of the fabric is. And then I'll sew all the way down. Flip it over, and on the other side I'll start from the same place. Okay, our bag is finished except for our box corners. If you want to have this as a completely flat bag, you can go right ahead and do that. It'll be a great little carry bag for laptops and tablets, books, notebooks. and that will be the finished size of your bag. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to box the corners just so that we can kind of use this as more of a grocery bag or something to put your clothes in when you're going away or to the beach. Put your hand in through the bag and open up that side seam. Open up this seam, and we're going to line up the center of this seam with the folded edge of the seam underneath. And to make sure you get through there properly, grab a pin and go through that seam and have the pin come through the other side at the seam. So you now have that sitting nice and flat. Lay that down. And we'll measure across here until you get 2 inches or 5 centimetres from one side to the next. That's going to be our stitching line. On this side we're going to do the same, so I'm just putting my arm in there, opening that seam out, pushing that together with the seam underneath. Pop the pin into the seam. Oh, how's that? First go. And bring it out on the other side. When you're happy with that, you can clip those edges together. Lay that nice and flat, and we'll make that same measurement and sew across there. Then we're finished. So keeping that seam nice and flat here and underneath, we're going to sew straight along that line. And repeat for the other side. So our bag's completely finished now. Now some people may not like to have their little ears remaining inside their bags. You might want to cut across. If you do want to cut across it, then I recommend sewing this ear from the other side first and creating French seams. I've done it in other videos before. I actually like to keep my ears whole because it provides a little bit of extra stability in the bag. It helps stop it from sagging down at the corners. If you don't like them floating about, you can just tack it so that it sits up on the side seam or down onto the base of the bag. I like to just leave them as they are. And there we have our tea towel turned into a handbag or a little tote. Bring this the right way out. You can go and iron it again if you like. I don't. And just poke out those corners so that'll sit nice and flat. Same on this side. And there we have a nice square corner, which helps to bring the side of the bag in a little bit because it was running the risk of becoming too wide because we'd made so many cuts and folds on the top and bottom of the bag. If you're using a full-sized tablecloth without having to cut and create the flat felt seam at the bottom, then your bag's going to be a little bit longer, but it's not going to have as much stability at the bottom. So this flat felt seam helps give you a really nice sturdy base. Nifty, right? So what do you think? It's a very simple project to make. You don't have to do those flat felt seams at the bottom, but as I said, if you don't put a seam at the bottom and you just have it as a folded piece of fabric, it may just flop or bag out a little bit. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to be carrying goods in there. And you've got your box corners on the side there. I keep my ears on because I like the stability they give. And look, you could probably go and put some pockets on the inside if you wanted to put some loose change or a phone or something like that. But this is just a nice, quick little bag you can take and leave in the car. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.